Hey, what's up everyone? Today we're going to talk about another technique that I use to create exposed root Japanese black pines, and this is the example that we're going to be using. If you haven't already checked it out, check out the last video that we did where I used tall Anderson band pines to expose and create a mass of roots that basically becomes your trunk as an exposed root tree. That technique is really useful, but this is a slightly different technique, and it's one that I'm sure that some of you are familiar with, where basically you take a young seedling and you plant it on top of a taller container, and in the container is a rough mix of larger particles, and so the roots go down through those larger particles into this container at the bottom, which has normal soil, and by growing through those and then slowly exposing it, you create some interesting movement in the roots. So this tree has been in this container for a little bit over a year, and when it was first put in here, there was fine soil on the top, but I have removed the fine soil just by dumping it out, and what's left is mostly larger particles. Now, the tree wasn't super vigorous this past year, so I don't expect the roots in here to be really large yet, but I do want to get down and kind of keep coaxing the roots downward as the months roll on here. So it's beginning of winter essentially here in San Francisco, and I'm going to cut off another couple of inches. I'm actually going to cut off probably about the top half of this container and see what the roots look like, and then see if there's any work that I need to do. Before I go any further, I just want to mention that this is the way that I've made a few different trees that turned out really well in the past, and if you want one example, here it is. This is actually one of my favorite trees, and I haven't shared it with you guys, I think, on YouTube, but basically this technique that I'm going to demonstrate was used to create this tree. So everything from about here down into the soil, this section was created by using a coarse mix and a big tube of soil particles. Gone ahead and cut away about the top half or third of this, and now I'm going to use my tweezers to just kind of get in here and take a look at what the structure of the roots looks like. So if you're going to use scissors to cut away this upper sort of wall of plastic that's used to contain the soil, be sure that you're keeping an eye on where these roots are going. And so, for example, I have this bigger root coming down here right over towards the wall. So I'm going to be really careful when I cut the wall on this side of the pot to make sure that I'm not running into those roots as they come out to the edge and then run down. For now, I think that's all I'm going to do. And basically what I'm looking at here in terms of making the decision is that I'm running into some of these feeder roots that are still active here. I'm not really concerned about those feeder roots, but what I am concerned about is exposing too many of the small woody roots that are kind of just behind them all at once, because I do want to keep all of these roots that are coming out of the trunk here. I'm going to just sort of set this aside for another few months and probably revisit this actually in the middle of the coming growing season, say June or July, when they've had a little bit more time to bulk up, and then this will have been cleared off by watering, rain, whatnot, and I'll be able to assess the roots a little bit better. The advantage to this technique really is that, as opposed to taking all of the roots and creating a bundle that then sort of becomes your trunk, this will give you a less controlled kind of look to the roots, which can be really nice in some compositions. In general, you're going to have to try to avoid having straight sections of roots that are long and big. And so as I'm exposing this, I'm kind of looking through here to make sure that I don't see any roots that have kind of come out to the side of the container and run straight down. Because if I did find those, I'd want to either create some movement by, tying the bundle together at the top, or some other technique in order to make sure that those roots didn't stay straight in the long term. The other difference between the technique of bundling up all the roots and this technique is that you will sort of gradually create a flare in the roots, and instead of the roots being a mass, the roots will have a little bit more air in between them as part of the final composition. If you go back through the feed and look for the fused root Japanese black pine critique that I did a few months ago, you'll see that you can actually use this technique to create really big trunks and fused roots, and we'll explore that a little bit more in a future video. But I hope you guys enjoyed that, and we'll see you guys next time.